Joe is definitely holding on to the lead. Now he's into the part of the course where I think he actually has a bit of an advantage due to the width. And then there's the blast to the finish line. And Joe Austin takes it by a half second lead right now for Joe Austin as he moves over to that left side. So a half-second lead for Joe Austin in the Mini up against Eric Hyman in the GTR over on the right side. But Joe Austin hung on to a half a second of the 5.5 he had at the start line due to dial-in. If you're swapping workers, just have them go out through the middle. All right, whole shot. Whoops. Thought he'd already left. All right, started to announce it too soon. 6:09 for Joe Austin and a 7:43 for Eric. So he got a little conservative, and he tags a cone. So Joe Austin, of course, not knowing any of these, Joe is going to go like there's just fearing that he's going to get swallowed up by the GTR, and Eric way off into the edge of the dirt, doing a little agricultural work over there. So Joe's staying clean so far, coming down to the slalom. Joe is back first and takes it on time by a little by 1.1 seconds plus the cone. So a 3-second win for Joe Austin over Eric Hyman. So Joe Austin moving on to the second round, knocking off Eric Hyman. All right, we had next pair up was going to be Ricky Crow and Scott McHugh, but Scott was sharing that ride with Tom McDaniel, so the car was unable to go. So Ricky Crow is an automatic win and moves to the round. Up at the line, we get Ryan Otis up on the left side in that Z06 with a 33.573. Jeff Wong on the right side in the Civic with a 34.473. We're good to go. Okay, about a 2-light advantage on the tree for dial-in going to Jeff Wong, so almost a 1-second advantage there for him as he's matched up against that black Corvette. As they get to the crossover, boy, pretty close to equal at that point. We get down to the top of the course, and it's just about dead even, it looked to me. As you get into the slalom, that's where the Civic is especially well suited, so we'll see if he's able to pull back ahead a little bit, because it looked like Ryan Otis had gotten to the slalom first. And into the finish is Jeff Wong there ahead by 0.4 of a second, a 0.4 lead for Jeff Wong. Now moving over to that left side course, Ryan Otis over on the right, and Jeff with a 0.4 advantage right now after that first run. Boy, that was actually looking pretty close to right there at the end. Oh, and a red light for Ryan Otis, a 4:57 hole shot, so 43 thousandths too soon there on the light. So Jeff Wong, the automatic winner. So Jeff Wong will move on to the second round and match up against one of these two drivers. We got Chris over on the left side, Chris Miller in the Mini, and Paul Brown over on the right. We'll give you the particulars here in a moment. We have to let the computer screen clear before I can get to the details. All right, Chris Miller on the left side with a 36.104 dial-in. Paul Brown over on the right, a 34.107, so just about exactly 2-second advantage for Chris Miller. Starter, we're good to go. All righty, a better light for Paul Brown by about a tenth. A 583 for Paul, a 678 for Chris on the left. So Paul Brown chipping away a little bit of that dial-in advantage. They go through the crossover. Chris still holding on to the lead as they get to the top of the course. Boy, it looked just about equal to me. As they come back across there, maybe Chris had a slight advantage getting out of the turnaround. I would think once they get past the slalom and get that last little blast of acceleration, the advantage would go to Chris. But Chris with a 6/10 lead right now. So he moves over to that right side lane. Chris Miller in the Mini with a 6/10. Now over on that left side course. All right, Paul Brown once again with a good start, a 579 to a 780. So he made up 2/10 of the 6/10 right there at the start line. So it's down to, theoretically at least, down to a 4/10 spread. They get to the top of the course. Chris with a little bit of a lead right at the very top. Back through the crossover. This time looks like Paul Brown is a bit closer. We'll see what happens as they come down into the slalom here. Paul would have the advantage on the last little blast of the finish, and he pulls it off. A .134 win for Paul Brown. Just a little over a tenth of a second win for Paul Brown. At the start line, we got Andy Hollis up on the left side in the CRX with a 32.346 dial-in. Jonathan Lugot on the right, 33.370. Starter, we're good to go. All right, a 1 second advantage on the tree, and Andy Hollis got a little too much bite there at the start line and ended up with a red light of a 463, so 37 thousandths too quick on the trigger was Andy Hollis. We've now seen 3 or 4 red lights. And let's see, we got, okay, Paul Russell on the left with a 29.424 and a 33.2 for Sean O'Boyle. Starter, we're good to go. All right, about a 4 second spread between them. Sean O'Boyle with a good 582, Paul Russell with a 627, but Sean bogged a little bit actually after he got off a good jump. Then it bogged a bit and then got going again. At the top of the course, again with that big spread, it'll take a while for them to kind of come into the same zone of the course. But right now, Sean O'Boyle still holding on to a pretty good chunk of his lead, but watch that cart come down through the slalom. Into the finish light, Sean O'Boyle back first by almost 2/10 of a second, .180. So we'll call it 2/10 for Sean O'Boyle as he moves over to that left side. But now car with about a 2/10 lead over Paul Russell. Hole shots, pair of fives here, so pretty close to equal. 572 left, 569 right. So it's going to come down to what goes on the course, and there's only a 2/10 spread between them. So both these drivers have to make championship runs here to be able to move to the next round as they get through the crossover. Much closer this time for Paul Russell. He was several car lengths, real car lengths, behind Sean O'Boyle at the crossover, and now he comes in first and takes the win by 1.1 seconds, and a new dial-in for him. It's in the Miata from B-Stock with a 34.937, and on the right from ESP is John Hogan in the Mustang with a 32.287, and starter, we're good to go. Alrighty, hole shots, a 5:07 for John Hogan. Fantastic start, a 5:38 for Michael, which we normally think of as a really good aggressive start, but a 5:07 for John Hogan in the blue Mustang. They get to the top of the course, the Miata, with still a little bit of a lead there. Miata being a bit narrower should have a little bit of advantage, but that Mustang's got those big sticky R compound tires as they're working their way down. I see a worker running. Yep, there's a cone down for John Hogan on the right side. Michael is back first by a little over a tenth, but there's a cone for John Hogan, so that becomes a 2.1 second advantage for Michael Heinitz in that white MX-5, now moving to the right side lane. So a 2.1 second advantage for the Mazda over the Mustang. All right, hole shots, a pair of sixes, 650 left, 652 on the right. But again, Michael Heinitz with the big advantage, but now he threw it away with him hitting a cone. So a cone down on the right side, so it's now down to a tenth of a second separating these two folks. Now, of course, John Hogan doesn't know anything about that, so he is just going to be going all guns out and may tag another cone as he tries to wind that big Mustang through the course. Hanging on there, looking good. Michael Heinitz takes it by 0.8 of a second, offsetting cone. So Michael Heinitz takes it by 0.7 on that round, by 1/10 on the other one. So Michael Heinitz takes an overall win on that one by 0.8 of a second. We'll move on to the next round to match up against one of these two folks. On the left side is Jeff Stewart in the, whoops, got the wrong pair here. Sorry, we skipped here. Yep, I was looking in the wrong place. Mark Scroggs up there on the left side in the Focus with a 35.112, and Nathan Gabriel on the right in the Miata with a 35.291. Starter, we're good to go. Okay, just a slight advantage on the right side, about 1/10 of a second for Nathan in the Miata over Mark in the ST Focus. So pretty close to heads-up competition here between the street front car running on in this class and Index, and Nathan out of STS. Through the crossover, it looks like the Focus has the advantage coming down into the slalom. He is ahead. Left side's back first by almost 0.2 of a second. 189 advantage for Mark Scroggs as Nathan closed that gap a bit right there at the end. Looked like Nathan had, or Mark had a bigger lead than that going into the slalom, but Nathan really made it tight right there at the end. So less than 0.2 separating him, with Mark Scroggs in the Focus having that advantage. hole shots here, a pair of sixes, 675 left, 671 right, so pretty much equal there. So again, 0.2 of a second advantage right now for Mark Scroggs from that first round. Now Nathan has his shot at that left side course, see if it's as friendly to him as it was for Mark. They get to the top, Mark still holding on to some lead at the turnaround, but it's coming back down through the slalom is where Nathan seems to close the gap. Again, just 0.2 separate him after the first round. Who's back first? And Mark Scroggs stretches it out to 0.8, so he took that side by 0.6. So Mark Scroggs in the focus, moves to the next round. All right, up at the line, we get Greg McCants in the ESP Subaru with a 32.287. Gary Thomason on the right in the Viper with a 32.259. Started, we're good to go. Alrighty, just thousandths between them on dial-in, so pretty much heads-up competition, and just thousandths between them on reaction time. 5:69 left, 5:64 right. So this is a really a matchup here between Greg McCants and Gary Thomason. Looks like Gary got to the slalom first. See if the narrower Subaru can get the advantage, but a cone down on the left side for Greg. Gary's back first anyway by 6.5 tenths. 6.5 tenths lead for Gary Thomason, plus the cone on Greg McCants. So a 2.6 second lead now for Gary Thomason. 2.6 second lead for Gary over Greg McCants. All right, a 6.95 by Gary Thomason, even with a almost 2.7 second lead. Greg McCants cutting a 5.22 light. Watch Greg go. He is going to be running right out at the raggedy edge, just hoping that he can close the gap, and at the same time hope Gary hits a cone. Now, the words Gary hitting a cone don't happen very often, so Greg's really going to have to be hammering on it here, and he sure is coming down through that slalom. Yeah, he ends up with 3 cones there. So Gary Thomason taking it on that one. So Gary Thomason, the winner by multiple seconds due to the cones and all. So we'll get the course rebuilt, and then we'll let you know about the rest of this. At the line, we got Jeff Stewart up on the left side in the 370Z with a 34.107 dial-in. Elliott Spidell on the right side with a 32.287. Starter, we're good to go. All right, hole shots here, pair of sixes, 606 left, 667 for Elliott on the right side. The advantage on the tree going about 2 seconds to Jeff Stewart in the 370Z. He's still holding on to some of that coming out of the turnaround into the crossover. He definitely gets to the slalom a couple of car lengths ahead of Elliott Spidell. We'll see if Elliott's able to wheel that big Mustang through the slalom enough to catch him into the finish lights. Left side's back first by 1/10.5. Jeff Stewart, 0.147, 1/10.5 advantage for Jeff Stewart as he moves around to the right side lane. With that advantage, now Elliott Spidell will get his shot at that left side course, looking for a 1/10.5 to catch Jeff Stewart. Okay, all shots, pair of fives, a 5.75 for Elliott But even better for Jeff Stewart, 5:19. So he's not taking that 10th-and-a-half lead for granted, as that was a great hole shot as Elliott Spidell wheeling that 2011 blue Mustang around, coming out of ESP. And on the right side, Jeff Stewart in that C Street Nissan 370Z. Again, Jeff with that 10th-and-a-half lead after the first round as they come down into the slalom. 10th-and-a-half is what Elliott's looking for, but doesn't get it. Jeff Stewart stretches it out and ends up winning by 7/10 of a second. Jeff Stewart with a 7/10 win in the 370Z, moving on to the second round. All right, up at the line, we get Tom Berry on the left side in that Mitsubishi with a 30.960. Jim Harnish on the right in the white Civic with a 34.473. Starter, we're good to go. All right, all shots, pair of fives, very close. 5:43 left, 5:45 right. Fair big difference. Let's see, what's that? 3.5 seconds or so advantage going to Jim Harnish in that STC Honda Civic against Tom Berry in that SPA Mitsubishi Evo. As they get around the turnaround and going through the crossover, Jim Harnish still holding on to some of that lead. Jim working his way down in there now. He's still got a bit of a lead coming down in the last part. Tom Berry accelerating to the finish line. Tom Berry's back first by a 10th-and-a-half, 0.135 to be exact, 0.135 advantage for Tom Berry. Made it up in that last blast to the finish as it looked like Jim Harnish was clear of the last slalom cone, and then Tom Berry just leaped ahead at the finish line. So Tom Berry with a 0.135 advantage over Jim Harnish, who's now coming up on the left side, Tom Berry on the right. All right, hole shots here. 6:53 for Tom Berry and a fantastic 5:11 for Jim Harnish. Jim Harnish cutting a 5:11 light. He needs to make up about a 10th-and-a-half, and he got all of that, or almost all of that, right there at the start line. But as they come through the crossover, Tom Berry is just a couple of car lengths behind. Jim Harnish getting into the slalom ahead once again. But it's that last blast of the finish where Tom is so good. But Jim Harnish takes the win by a half a second, knocking off Tom Berry here in the first round. Jim Harnish in the STC Civic taking the win by half a second over Tom Berry. All right, up at the line we got Terrence Chang on the left side in that STS CRX with a 35.291. Eric Nelson on the right with a 29.424 in the Formula 125. Starter, we're good to go. All right, Terrence Chang with a 7:04 light. Eric Nelson a fair bit quicker with a 6:24, so he makes up a 10th of what he had to sit there at the light while watching Terrence drive away. Eric Nelson really putting on a show here this weekend in that class, showing he's a driver as well as a setup guy. So working his way into the slalom now. Terrence with the advantage going in, but Terrence got all wild and nailed the last two cones in the slalom. So he's got a 4-second penalty working against him, as well as 3.5 tenths on the clock to Eric Nelson. So it's going to be a 4.3 second lead for Eric Nelson. 4.3 second lead as we got cones everywhere on Eric Nelson because he caught not only the upright but the pointers. So we got a total of 2 cones plus the time difference. 3 cones. There was another one I didn't see. So now it's a 6.3 second advantage for Eric Nelson. We got to rebuild the course though. All right, Eric being a little more conservative, of course, with the 768 hole shot. Terrence Chang figured he's got to go for it. 5:22. He's really got to hope for a complete meltdown on the part of Eric here, though. with almost a 6.5 second lead. All right, into the finish. Eric Nelson with the big win there, as he could pretty much cruise through and just stay off the cones. So Eric Nelson moving on to the next round. All right, up at the line we get Jeff Kiesel with a dial-in of 28,730 on the right side. Morgan Trotter in that new STC car for him, 34,473. Starter, we're good to go. Okay, a 5.7 second spread between them at the start lights, but another case where it'll be interesting to watch Jeff reel them in, as you've got one of the slower class cars, STC, out there ahead of Jeff Kiesel with a big lead, but Jeff closing the gap big chunks at a time as they come through the crossover and into the slalom. The Honda's still got a car length or so lead, but in the case of Kiesel's car, you don't have a super wide mod car, so Kiesel makes it up and more. A 6/10, almost 7/10 lead for Jeff Kiesel now. 6.60 to be exact is the advantage for Jeff Kiesel as he really reeled him in even through the slalom. So Morgan Trotter now up on the left side, down by 6.5 tenths. All right, pair of sixes here, 6.53 for Morgan Trotter, 6.20 for Jeff Kiesel. I'm not sure Jeff knows another way to go, but just full out. So 6.10, he was not going to lollygag at the line. So he comes barreling across the center part. Morgan still with a bit of the lead, but he's got to make up 6/10. It's going to be tough to do. He's got to stay off the cone. He tags a cone, just as I was saying, he had to stay off the cones. So Jeff Kiesel takes the win by 7/10 anyway, and the cone on top of that. So a 2.7 second win for Jeff Kiesel, who moved to the second round. All right, coming up to the line, we get Will Kalman on the left side with a 34,473 dial-in the Honda, the STC Honda, and Brian Peters in the STU Nissan 350 on the right with a 33,299. Starter, we're good to go. Brian Peters with a good 6.13 reaction time. Will Kalman even better with a 5.95 in the teal Civic. As they get to the far end of the course, pretty close to even there. It wasn't a huge difference in the dial-ins, about 1 second advantage for Will. It looks like Brian has made up most of that as they race down through the slalom now and into that final shoot to the finish. And Brian Peters takes it by 2.5 tenths lead for Brian Peters. That's actually about the same amount that he just broke out on that run. So a breakout run by Brian Peters puts him 2.5 tenths ahead of Will Kalman. So Will will have to, he also broke out by 17 thousandths. So both on breakout runs here, but Brian with the advantage there. Alrighty, got a 6.02 for Will Kalman, 7.02 for Brian Peters. So Will Kalman just made up a tenth of the 2.5 tenths he was down, and Brian Peters tags a cone. So Will Kalman now is in the lead. Will Kalman in the lead, but of course he doesn't know about the cone. So he's going all out, knowing he's got to make up 2.5 tenths, or at least that's what he left the line knowing he needed to do. So he works his way down through the slalom, got a little loose there on the entrance, but collected it well and is on his way in. And Will Kalman takes it on time by 33 thousandths of a second, a 33 thousandths win plus the cone. So on time, he won it by 33 thousandths, and a new dial-in for Will Kalman. Your dial-in went from, just down a little bit, down by a few thousandths there. So no big change there for Will. All right, at the line, we got Andy McKee up on the left side with a 29.632. Max Sang on the right in the BMW from STX, 34.012. Started, we're good to go. Oh, and a red light for Andy. Really dumped on it. He had a 4.32 red light, so 68 thousandths of a second too soon on the trigger there for Andy McKee. Max Sang taking the automatic win on the red light, who had a 6.89 reaction time. But again, 68 thousandths too soon on the trigger was Andy McKee. So coming up to the line is Ken Muranishi on the left side from STR with a 33.370 dial-in. Stephen Yo on the right side from STC with a 34.473. Starter, we're good to go. All right, a 9/10 advantage going to the STC car in the right lane on hole shots. Stephen Yo on the right with a 6.89, Ken Ronishi on the left with a 7.15. So a few hundredths separating them there. As they get to the turnaround to the far end of the course, STC car with Stephen Yo at the wheel, still with a bit of the lead coming down into the slalom. A couple of car lengths lead going in. See what they have coming out is. Left side's looking strong, but not quite enough. Stephen Yo with a 10th lead, 0.117 advantage for Stephen Yo in the STC Honda, moving over to the left side lane now. So just a tick over a 10th of a second, Stephen Yo on the left side to Ken Muranishi on the right. All right, hole shots here, 5.49 on the left for Stephen and 6.15 on the right for Ken Muranishi. So that effectively means Stephen Yo has stretched his lead to about 0.2 of a second. So 0.2 advantage right now for Stephen Yo. But never count Ken Muranishi out. In fact, he looks like he's pulled even as they go through the crossover, just about equal. So now it's a race down through the slalom as the STC car quicker than the STR Civic, but a cone down on the left side, so that pretty much seals it. Stephen was back first by 6.5 tenths, but a cone on Stephen Yo. Ken Muranishi takes it by 1.4 seconds because of the cone. They're checking actually on a cone for him. Nope, still safe. So Ken Muranishi, just confirmed, is the winner, and we'll move to the second round. All right, next up, we got, we're into the second round. Joe Austin up on the left side with a dial-in of a 36.104 up against Ricky Crow with a 34.012. Starter, we're good to go. All right, Joe Austin with a 6.94. A bit better was Ricky Crow with a 5.62. Plus, Joe looked like he bogged a bit after the launch, so That 60-foot mark will probably not be what he normally gets. They get to the far end of the course, it's just about equal. There was a 2-second advantage, 1.9 advantage for Joe, but looks like Ricky Crow has made all of that up as they look. Oh, but a cone on the right side for Ricky. So Ricky Crow's back first by 0.6 of a second, but with the cone, Joe Austin now has a 1.4 second lead, a 1.4 second lead for Joe Austin as they swap sides. So 1.4 second lead for Joe over Ricky Crow, moves up on the left side. Ricky in that beautiful hot lava Scion FRS running out of STX class. Joe Austin in the familiar blue Mini from STF. All right, whole shots here, a pair of sixes, but Ricky with the advantage, a 621 to a 685 for Joe Austin. So Joe not taking that 1.4 second lead for granted as they work their way around to the turnaround. Just about equal once again at the top of the course. The end of the slalom, again, really close. But again, Ricky tagged a cone last time around, so that may be end up being the difference here. Yeah, Joe Austin, Ricky was 0.4 quicker on that one, but the cone cost him. Joe Austin with a 1 second win going on to the third round. All right, up at the line, we get, see Jeff Long up on the left side in the Civic with a 34.473 coming out of STC, and out of STF, Chris Miller in the Mini Cooper with a 36.104. Started, we're good to go. Okay, about a 1.5 second advantage for the Mini, and Chris a little lackadaisical on the lights with an 8:23 reaction time to a 6.66 for Jeff Long. So Chris, hopefully that won't come back to bite him as he gave away almost 0.2 right there at the start line. So they come out of the crossover. The Mini still had a little bit of the advantage he had up the tree. Pretty close to equal size cars, so no particular advantage here in terms of width in the slalom. And Jeff Long is back first by 50 thousandths of a second. 50 thousandths lead for Jeff Long now over Chris Miller. And again, that rather leisurely start on Chris Miller's part is the only reason really that Jeff Long has got that 50 thousandths. Okay, a much more aggressive light this time for Chris Miller, 6:39 and 0.2 quicker than he was before. Jeff Long with a 6:56, so the difference between them is now down to about 30 thousandths of a second when you factor in the advantage from the course to the hole shots just then. So we're really talking about a head-to-head drag race back to the finish area. Coming down in the slow, and Chris Miller gets all wild and woolly going into the finish. Luckily stays away from the trips. And Jeff Long will be the winner as Chris Miller trying to carry a little bit too much speed into the slalom. And so Jeff Long takes that one after the big spin by Chris Miller. So and a cone for Jeff Long as well, but he had a 9-second lead plus the cones. And anyway, Jeff Long taking the win. All right, up at the line.
He gets one, and you're
Okay, at the line we get Jonathan Lucan over on the left side with a 33.370. Paul Russell on the right, 28.864. Started, we're good to go. Okay, whole shots there. Paul Russell with a good 6:17, but even better was Jonathan Lugard on the left side in that S2000 with a 5:75. So the STR car had the advantage over the KM Formula 125 right there at the start line as they get to the slalom. Lugard with a little bit of advantage over Paul Russell. Well, Paul just flies down through a slalom. That car is so narrow. And Jonathan Lugard, though, comes back ahead with 80 thousandths of a second, 80 thousandths lead over Paul Russell. Now, we had a similar situation in the first round where Paul Russell was down by 80 thousandths and then came roaring back for a convincing win. So, at any rate, Lugard with the advantage. Okay, a pair of sixes, a 693 for Jonathan, 629 for Paul Russell. So that difference between them gets most of it out of the way, but doesn't really matter as there's a couple of cones, at least one down, maybe two. One cone down at least for Jonathan. Yep, one. We'll see what happens on time anyway, though. Paul Russell flying down through there, and two cones now. So Paul Russell back. He stretched out the lead on time anyway, plus a couple of cones for Jonathan Lugard. So Paul Russell will take that win. Paul Russell moves to the third round.
Oh, here. It's a 34072.
Next block over. Yep. All righty. Okay, at the line, Michael Heinitz on the left side from B-Stock with a dialing of 34.937. Jeff Stewart on the right side in the Nissan out of C Street, 34.107. Starter, you're good to go. Okay, a matchup of C Street and B Street in this particular case at this event. C Street was quicker, so I had the lower dial in. On reaction times, though, just about dead equal. 6:21 for Jeff on the right, 6:19 for Michael on the left side in the MX-5. Jeff Stewart in that blue 370Z. And looks like Stewart got to the slalom first. We'll see what happens with a slightly narrower MX-5 as he works his way through that 5-cone, effectively 6-cone slalom. And Heinitz is back first by .125. .125 advantage for Michael Heinitz, who now takes that lead over to the right side line. And Jeff Stewart over to the left. Well, on a red light for Jeff Stewart, trying to make it all up there at the start line. 4:44, so 66 thousandths too quick on the trigger is Jeff Stewart on that left side. Michael Heinitz cutting a great light, though, a 5:40. He wasn't taking that slim margin for granted and cut a great 5:40. So Jeff Stewart out. Michael Heinitz in the white MX-5 will move to the next round. Okay, we're halfway through our round of 16, and coming up to the line, we got Mark Scroggs on the left side in the Focus ST with a 35.1. Gary Thomason in the Viper on the right with a 32.2. Starter, we're good to go. So a 3-second advantage for the Focus, but that only didn't get him quite to that first pointer cone before Gary Thomason was able to unleash the power of that V10 with a 6:43 reaction time. Mark Scroggs with a 7:42 hole shot in the Focus ST. So they come around to the far corner of the Focus with a little bit of the lead at the center point, maybe a half car length or so. Yeah. And Gary Thomason, as big as that Viper is, he sure makes it dance through there looking like a Miata. And Gary is back first by almost 9/10 of a second, an almost 9/10 lead, 8.84 exact, but call it 9/10 for Gary Thomason as he moves over to that left side with that 32.2 dial in, and Mark Scroggs to the right with a 35.1, but more importantly, that almost 9/10 lead right now that Gary Thomason has. Okay, hole shots here, a pair of fives, almost equal, 581 on the right for Mark. For Mark on the right of 581, 585 for Gary Thomason. So even though Gary's got a 9/10 lead, he's still cutting 5 lights. Cone wiggled by Mark Scroggs, but apparently no call on it. Still in the box as they get to the slalom again. Gary's just especially good in that Viper. Again, as big as that car is, he makes it just dance through there, but Scroggs catches a cone. Gary Thomason takes it anyway by almost 6/10 of a second plus the cone. So Gary Thomason in the Viper is the winner. All right, up to the line. We get Jeff Kiesel up on the line against Will Kalman. Jeff with a 28.730 dial in, Will with a 34.3. Starter, we're good to go. A red light win for Jeff Kiesel as Will Kalman left 7 thousandths too early. A 493 red light, 7 thousandths too soon. So Jeff Kiesel moves automatically as soon as he got a green light to the third round. All right, now we're going back to Jim Harnish and Eric Nelson coming up to the lights. Jim Harnish on the left side in the STC Civic with a 34.473 dial in. Eric Nelson the 125 with a 29.424. Starter, we're good to go. All right, a 6:02 light for Eric Nelson. As good as that sounds, Jim Harnish cut a 5.15 light for Jim Harnish. So a great hole shot there for both drivers, but especially for Jim. Big lead on the clock of 5 seconds, and still holding on to a big chunk of it as he entered the slalom on the left, as Eric Nelson wasn't there yet. He still was in the middle of the crossover. But Jim Harnish in first with almost a 7/10 lead, a 686 differential. So Jim Harnish with a 7/10 lead as he moves over to that right side lane. Eric Nelson over to the left. But again, 7/10 separating these two drivers, with Jim Harnish in the white STC Civic having that advantage. Okay, another pair of great lights, 563 for Harnish, 546 for Eric Nelson, But more importantly, Jim Harnish has that almost 7/10 lead after that first round. But now those race slicks in that KM car are really warmed up, if they weren't already. But coming through the crossover, Jim Harnish with still a good chunk of the lead, but less than he had when he was over on the other side. So as he comes down through the slalom, Eric Nelson trying to reel him in. Jim Harnish is back first. Eric caught him on that one, but not by enough to make up for the first round. So a 3/10 win for Jim Harnish. Jim Harnish winning by 3/10. So Eric Nelson made up half of it, but not quite enough to pull ahead. So Jim Harnish with the win. All right, at the line we got Max Sang on the left side in the BMW out of STX with a 34.0 dial-in. Ken Motonishi from STR on the right with a 33.370. Starter, they're all yours. Okay, a pair of sixes here, 628 on the left side for Mac, 674 for Ken Motonishi, so half a tenth advantage for Mac on the left side in that STX BMW. On dial-ins, just about 7/10 is all that separate them, so not even two lights on the tree. Through the crossover, Mac still having the advantage as he enters the slalom. See what Ken Motonishi can do as he dances that S2000 up through and into the finish strips. But Mac will be back first by 6/10 of a second. BMW with Max Sang at the wheel, 6/10 lead as he moves over to that right side lane. Again, 6/10 advantage for Mac over Ken Motonishi. This is for the last slot in the third round. And Mac Sang has the advantage of 6/10 right now. Alrighty, 650 for Ken Motonishi, 772 for Max Sang, so he just gave away a tenth, a little more than a tenth of that, so it's down to a half a second spread between the two, at least in theory. When they get to the far end of the course, Ken Motonishi has made that up. He got to the center part of the crossover first and entered that slalom first, so he's got 6/10 he needs to make up. Can he do it? It looks like he will. Yep, Ken Motonishi takes the win by a half a second over Max Sang. So Ken Motonishi makes it into the third round with a great comeback run on the second pair, a 493 half-second lead and win going into that third round. All right, to begin the third round, we get Joe Austin up on the left side with a 36.104. Jeff Long from STC with a 34.473. Starter, they're all yours. Red light start for Joe, a 484 red light, 16 thousandths, too quick on the trigger there. Jeff Long seeing that, and he just cruised away with an 820. Unfortunately, Joe getting a red light there by 16 thousandths. Jeff Long now part of the last four. It's a cone on his cruise back. So we'll carry that over the next round, Jeff. No, just kidding. All righty, we got so quick to that, no one's quite ready to go because Paul Russell's car just finished up. Jim Harnish just finished up a moment ago, so we can't jump ahead. So we're going to have a couple of minutes here while we get sorted around.
Okay, you know you're going to need new tires. It's inevitable, right? So why not get them from TireRack.com? With Tire Rack's online research tools, you'll know you're getting exactly the right tires for you, your car, and the way you drive it, all at a great price. Don't just change your tires, change the way you buy tires. The biggest selection of tires. One more way Tire Rack is revolutionizing the way you buy tires. TireRack.com. Research, buy, deliver, install. Okay, you know you're... tires. It's inevitable, right? So why not get them from TireRack.com? With Tire Rack's online research tools, you'll know you're getting exactly the right tires for you, your car, and the way you drive it, all at a great...
Beautiful.
Jessica, there's something I want to ask you.
Yes?
When I'm switching to winter tires, do I have to change all four, or can I just put two on the front axle? I don't know.
There's a better place to ask questions
On the
about
right,
your time.
34,937. Started, we're good to go. Alrighty, what happened there? Okay, Michael Heinitz with a 9:40 reaction time, and then he bogged after that, so this does not look good for him. But Paul Russell with a 7:07, which is uncharacteristically slow for him. So wait for these cars to get the finish. It's going to look like Paul in first. And unfortunately, we had a little computer glitch here. We're going to have to rerun that round. So drivers, if you either want to, you can come up the same side again or cross over. We had a little glitch on the timer on that one. Sorry for the inconvenience. I know it's very hot out there, so I apologize for that. Again, Paul Russell back up on the left with a 28.8. Michael Heinitz with a 34.9, and starter, hopefully we really are ready this time. This rerun for Michael Heinitz definitely worked in his advantage. He was up in the 9s, and this time he cuts a 5:03 light with no bog. So a 5:03 light for Michael Heinitz. Paul Russell with a 6:15, having to sit there all that much longer in that hot abrasion suit when it's 100 degrees outside. So as they come down through the slalom, Paul's just trying to go fast to keep cool. And looks like Paul will be back first. He is by almost 3.5 tenths. So Paul Russell, 3.5 tenths lead, or call it 3.30. So almost 3.5 tenths lead for Paul Russell as he moves to that right side now. All right, hole shots here, 6.26 for Michael Heinitz, pretty good, but Paul Russell not taking anything for granted with a 5.39 hole shot for Paul Russell. It's definitely getting to the slalom first, but again, Paul Russell just flies down through this as to how narrow that cart is and how well it sticks. And into the finish lights, Paul Russell takes the win with a 9/10 lead win and a new dial-in of a 28.367, so he knocks a half a second off his dial-in going into the final four. So he won, but with a penalty or with a cost there. All right, up at the line, we get Gary Thomason up on the left-hand side with a 32.259. And on the right, Jim Harnish from STC with a 34.473. Started there all years. All right, a 2.2 second lead on the tree for Jim Harnish in the STC car. A 6:01 white for Jim Harnish, a 5:63 for Gary Thomason. So Gary continuing a string of reaction times in the fives through the Super Challenge. You get to the turnaround, Harnish still holding on to some of it, but boy is he closing the gap on him. Gary Thomason closing that gap quickly. Come down through the slalom. Again, you'd think the Civic would have the advantage here, but Gary really makes that Viper work well through that. He comes back with an 83 thousandths lead, 83 thousandths separating those two drivers, with Gary Thomason having that narrow lead. And about half of that was on reaction time. Alrighty, a 5:42 light for Jim Harnish, and 5:31 for Gary Thomason. So Gary, obviously with that 83 thousandths, he's still hammering on it, and I think that's his. He's run every reaction time, I think, has been in the fives during the challenge competition. Just about equal as they get to the slalom. So at this juncture, I'd say that Gary has the advantage, but we'll see what happens right here at the finish. And Gary stretches it out to 4/10 win and gets a new dial-in. Gary Thomason and a cone on the left for Jim Harnish. Catches that last cone in the slalom, but Gary Thomason takes the win and gets a new dial-in of a 31.562. So Gary Thomason's dial-in drops by 7/10. All right, at the line we get Jeff Kiesel up on the line on the left side with a 28.730, and Ken Monishi on the right with a 33.370. Starter, they're all yours. Okay, a 660 light for Ken Monishi on the right and a 560 for Jeff Kiesel. So he had a 1/10 advantage on reaction time. Ken Monishi at the far end. Boy, it's a lot closer than I thought it might be already. Into the slalom, and Ken Monishi's just there, a couple of car lengths ahead. And as they hammer their way down through the slalom, Kiesel reeling them in. And Kiesel takes it with .279, so almost a 3/10 advantage for Kiesel as he comes around to that right side. 3/10 advantage for Kiesel over Ken Monishi, and 1/10 of that was at the start line. Alrighty, whole shots there. 5:36 for Ken Monishi, 5:85 for Jeff Kiesel. So Monishi making back just a little bit of it right there at the start line, but he needs to make up almost 0.3 of a second as they come through the crossover. He's got a bit more of a lead than he did last time going into the slalom. See if he's able to hang on and pull up 0.3 ahead. He's at 0.3. Jeff Kiesel taking the win by 71 thousandths of a second. 71 thousandths of a second win for Jeff Kiesel over Ken Motornishi. So really narrow margin there. I think the closest we've seen. 71 thousandths. All right, at the line, we got Jeff Wong up on the left side with a 34.473. Paul Russell on the right with a 28.367. Starter, they're yours. Okay, Paul Russell with a 5:43 light, 6:72 for Jeff Wong, so he made up over 1/10 of what he's behind on dial-in. And Paul Russell, now that cart's really warmed up after all the runs he and Eric have both made in it. Get to the crossover, and Jeff Wong with a huge lead still going into the slalom as Paul Russell reels him into the finish lights. Paul Russell back first by 53 thousandths of a second. 53 thousandths of a second. Okay, well, there's a cone on the left side. We just got the late call in, so Paul Russell with a 2-second lead. Alrighty, Paul Russell with a 6.99 light to a 7.77 for Jeff Wong. And again, Paul Russell, a late call on a cone that just came through before the lights came down. So a 2-second advantage, almost 2.1 for Paul Russell after that first round. Come down in the finish, Paul Russell with the win there. Well, 1.6. Jeff Wong made up 0.4 of it, but not enough to overtake him. So it'll be Paul Russell in the top eliminator round against either Gary Thomason or Jeff Kiesel. So some really top-notch drivers here in these final rounds. As Paul Russell just knocked off a really tough Jeff Wong. Jeff will go into the runoff round against either Jeff Kiesel or Gary Thomason. So any of these drivers in the final four are championship caliber drivers, so one of the strongest fields we've had in the Final Four in quite some time, with all these drivers capable of doing it. The next pair up is going to be Gary Thomason and Jeff Kiesel, both from Southern California. Gary Thomason in the SSR Viper with a dial in of 31.562, and Jeff Kiesel in the famous Turbo Sprite, the bright green one, with a 28.730 dial in. So about 3 seconds spread between the two. Not very often that Gary Thomason gets a 3-second advantage. Okay, just a slight delay here as those cars just came off, getting the last tire pressure checks on those cars, and they'll be coming up to the line here momentarily. right, again, Gary Thomason in the V10 Viper up on the left-hand side. Jeff Kiesel in the rotary-powered Sprite on the right. 31.5 on the left side, 28.7 on the right. Starter, they're yours when they're ready. All right, a pair of fives, as you'd expect. Kiesel with a 5.29, Gary Thomason with a 5.66. Gary has not had any start in the challenge that wasn't in the fives. As they work their way to the far end, Gary Thomason with still some of that lead, which is hard to even contemplate that rarely does Gary Thomason get to leave first. As they come down to the slalom, looks like Kiesel's there first. He is by 9/10 of a second, breaks out by 1/1000th of a second, which means Gary was off the pace a bit on that run, as Kiesel breaks out by 1/1000th of a second. Of course, Gary's got that new dial-in as he had to fight his way into this over Jim Harnish. Ends up with a tougher dial-in. All right, Gary Thomason, the first start he's had, not in the fives, but it's a low 6.17 to a 5.96 for Jeff Kiesel. Jeff with a 9/10 advantage, and normally you'd think that'd be time to stroke it just a bit, but not when Gary Thomason's in the other lane. Gary Thomason definitely with a bit more of the lead as he comes through the crossover, but he needs 9/10 of a second. That is going to be tough as they come down into the finish area. Thomason's there first, but gains back only about half of it, so Jeff Kiesel takes the win by almost 6/10, a little over 5/10, 5.5 or so. So Jeff Kiesel will be in the top eliminator round against Paul Russell, and Gary Thomason will match up against Jeff Long in the runoff round for third place. But Jeff Kiesel takes that one by .579 over Gary Thomason. So we'll be looking for, again, a bit of a pause here as obviously Gary just finished, as did Jeff Kiesel. So it'll be a moment before we get our third place up here. In the meantime, we'll remind you of awards presentations, although my understanding I can't see out there that a good part of the paddock is already departed, so it's kind of ghost town back there. So this might go really, really quickly. But mostly we want to congratulate and get some photos of our challenge winners, and that is, of course, in ladies class was Annie Gill, and the bonus challenge was our Mustang driver, Dennis Healy, and then either Paul Russell or Jeff Kiesel for the top eliminator round. We will do those awards over on the site exit side, the left course side of the tire rack trailer.
Get some wings?
TireRack.com. Get the answers you need, online or on the phone, to find the right winter tires at the right price. TireRack.com. Research, buy, deliver, install. This is beautiful. Don't just change your tires, change the way you buy tires. The biggest selection of tires. One more way Tire Rack is revolutionizing the way you buy tires. TireRack.com. Research, buy, deliver, install. Okay, you know you're going to need new tires.
you got a runoff round coming up. Jeff Wong on the left side in the Civic with a 34.473 dial-in. Out of SDC, Gary Thomason from SSR with a 31.562. Start of the years. Okay, a pair of sixes to finish up, or to start this round. 674 for Jeff Long on the left, 624 for Gary Thomason. Jeff with about a 3-second lead on the tree due to their dial-ins. Again, Gary Thomason working off a new and improved dial-in. They go through the center part of the crossover with Jeff with maybe a car length. They work their way down to the finish area. Looks like Gary Thomason back first by a 1/10 and a half. 142 advantage for Gary Thomason. 142 for Gary. All right, as they swap sides, Gary over to the left side again with that 1/10 and a half lead. Jeff Wong trying to make that up over on the right. All right, Gary Thomason back to form with a reaction time of 5:31 for his last one here this weekend. 6:44 for Jeff Wong. So on that one, he stretches it out and almost doubles his lead on reaction. Oh, but Gary spins it at the far end of the course. Big loop at the far end as maybe he's just got those big tires a little too hot and got a little greasy there, and he got off into the marbles. I saw a lot of dust come up, so Jeff Wong will be back first and take third place from Gary Thomason. Gary will finish fourth overall. So Gary, unfortunately, with a big spin down there, Jeff Long takes the win there and will get third place points here at Crow's Landing. All right, our top eliminator round, the first top eliminator round in 20 years here at Crow's Landing. Paul Russell up on the left-hand side, and Jeff Kiesel on the right. Paul Russell with a 28.367. Jeff Kiesel with a 28.730. The rare case where Jeff gets to leave first. Starter, they're all yours. All right, Jeff Kiesel with an uncharacteristically slow reaction time of a 9.27 to a 6.77 for Paul Russell. So 3/10 in the hole right there at the beginning, and that's just about the spread on the tree between them. So, like I said, very unusual for Jeff Kiesel to cut that kind of light. But it looks like he will be back first by 7.5 tenths, almost 8 tenths actually. Lead for Jeff Kiesel, 7.74 lead for Jeff Kiesel over Paul Russell. Now Paul has come from behind on a couple of occasions during the Super Challenge, so this could happen again. Jeff Kiesel now up on the left side, Paul Russell on the right. Last run of the weekend. All right, 7.26 for Kiesel with a 6.13 for Paul. So obviously Paul going for it. Kiesel with nearly 8 tenths and a cone. All righty, as they come down, looks like Kiesel staying clean so far into the finish. Kiesel takes it on time, so the cone didn't come into play. 384 win, almost a 4/10 win for Jeff Kiesel. Jeff Kiesel is our top eliminator and Super Challenge winner here at Crow's Landing, the first in 20 years. So we'd like to see Jeff bring his car around to the sort of shady side of the trailer, the left side, Annie Gill and Dennis Healy. Bring your Mustang over if you're still here. I realize a lot of folks, most folks, have already left. So we'll do an abbreviated award ceremony so everybody can get packed up and ready to head home. We want to thank San Francisco region for all their help, especially during the challenge here, and the great courses. So thanks so much to one and all. And we'll see you outside for the challenge award presentation here in just a minute or two. So again, unfortunately we couldn't have champagne here, and our usual substitute just seemed a bit sticky in 100-degree weather. So we're going to pass on that.
It's inevitable, right? So why not get them from TireRack.com? With TireRack's online research tools, you'll know you're getting exactly the right tires for you, your car, and the way you drive it, all at a great price. Don't just change your tires, change the way you buy tires. The biggest selection of tires. One more way TireRack is revolutionizing the way you buy tires. TireRack.com. Research, buy, deliver, install. Okay, you know you're going to need new tires.